Conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so there are many things happening in the kosher world, and constantly there are these new developments that are coming up. So we're all familiar. You've got your oat milk, you've got your soy milk, you've got your, I believe, rice milk is probably one of the first things that they began with, right? And basically, if you had a filmy white liquid, they would call it milk, right? But it never worked like milk or really tasted like milk, right? And certainly when it came to cheeses and that gooey comfort food that we enjoy, it did not work in that way. I'm just going to mute it. Everybody just mute yourselves, otherwise we get some bounce back over here. Okay, so let me go quickly do that. Sorry, nothing personal. If you want to talk up, please feel free to unmute yourselves and then speak up. But now there is something called Chalav Chadash, which is on the market in Israel, and let's hear about it. 1 second, we're having problems here. There we go. Okay, labeled as new milk, Hachalav Chadash. Right, you have a picture there on the sheet of how it looks in Israeli supermarkets right now, and it's a little harder to see, but it's clearly Hachalav Chadash. It says Beli Parot, Beli Pisharot. It's a very cute Israel way of putting it. Beli Parot means Beli without cows, and then you put in the letter Shin, Pisharot. A pesher is a compromise. So no cows, no compromises, meaning it's going to taste, it's going to react just like milk normally does. Okay, labeled, and again on the picture that we have over there on the back, you see it says kosher parava, right? In Hebrew, of course, right? To let you know this is kosher's parava, labeled as new milk. Hachalav chadash in Hebrew, the re-milk beverage contains proteins identical in structure to dairy proteins in cow-produced milk. Okay, that's the key, right? The proteins are identical in their structure to dairy proteins in cow produced milk, but engineered in the company's laboratories via a yeast based fermentation process. Since no cow or milk cells or particles were used, as we'll soon see, that's where the kashrut issues that came up, which we'll see a little bit today, with the lab grown meat. Just first, let's hear first, right? So since no cow or milk cells or particles were used, the product has received a parva kosher certification under the supervision of the chief rabbinate of Israel. The result is something that, according to the company, looks like milk, tastes like milk, behaves like milk when frothed or used in cooking, unlike any previous plant-based milk alternative, opening up the potential for a revolution in the kosher culinary world. This milk has the qualities of milk, but it is not really milk. It is totally free from anything connected to cows. If the initial cell had been taken from a cow or from cow milk, there would be arguments, as we'll soon see. Yes, Janet.
So then, why is genetically engineered rennet produced from microbial cells now we're still rejected for cheese culture?
I'm not sure. Okay. So over here, what we have is things produced from yeast, which have no connection whatsoever to the molecules of milk or to cells that come from a cow. As the last paragraph said, right? If the initial cell had been taken from a cow, there would be arguments. That's why there are arguments when it comes to the lab-grown milk. The lab-grown milk is meat. Sorry, the lab-grown milk, meat. Thank you. Right? That runs into issues, even though you started with one cell and now you've got 1 billion times that amount, right? But that runs into issues as we saw over here. Let's see the Shulchan Aruch Code of Jewish Law Yoredeya, and this is some basic kashrut, which is good to be familiar with. Nafal chalav, the classic, a little bit of milk fell letoch kedera shel basar, into a pot of meat, or a little bit of milk fell into your chicken soup. Toa min achaticha. So if it fell onto a piece of meat, you have to taste that piece. That the milk fell upon it. Does it have? If it does not have a taste of chalav, it's mutar. If it does have a taste of chalav, of milk, then it's asur. The problem is, how can you go ahead and taste it? If you taste it and you thereby have a taste of milk, it's too late. You just ate non-kosher. So therefore, this is being done by a non-Jewish chef, is doing the tasting for you. Ula didan, the Ramah says, according to our approach, that we don't rely on a non-Jew. So therefore, we don't start tasting, but what do we require? Be'inan shishin, bechaticha, we need a ratio of 60-1. Then it's permitted, ve'imlav, and if not, then kula asura, it is prohibited.
How do you measure that?
So, how do you measure that? So if I've got a 5-quart, right, soup, right, and a couple of drops of milk splattered, so then it's right. So it's very clear. I've got 60 times that, right? If you're not sure, then you can't eat it. An assessment, yeah. And umasharin bekula, we assess the pot in its entirety. Imhaya bekol ma sheyesh b'kedera, right? All that's in the pot, which is chatichot, the pieces of meat, and the yerek, the vegetables, v'amarak, and the soup, the gravy, v'atavlin, and the spices. Kedei shetehei chaticha zo echad mishishim me'akol hachaticha asura v'hashar mutar. Let's say that piece of meat is sitting above. It's like a challenge. It's sitting above, and it falls into that. And I don't have shishim. I don't have 60 of that piece to the drop of milk that fell on it. But I've got 60 in the pot versus that piece. Meaning that whole piece now became a shtik isser. That whole piece became something that's considered patichat isur, a piece of isser. Now I need 60 when it's basar b'chalav, milk and meat. I need 60 versus the whole thing. I take everything into account. Now, lo amru chaticha atzma nasa nevel by 92.4. This is a halachic concept, which is chaticha atzma nasit nevela. What happens is this: once that milk falls onto that piece, and I don't have 60 versus that piece, and now that piece then gets mixed up with everything else, I don't look at the whole pot versus the drop. Because once it fell into that piece, and there wasn't 60 versus that piece, that whole piece becomes now this mixture of milk and meat. This whole piece becomes asur. According to the Shulchan Aruch, that's only the case by milk and meat. Milk and meat where you had mutar, permitted milk, and you had permitted meat. The two of them come together to create this new entity that is prohibited. Therefore, this whole piece now becomes asur. And I'll need 60 versus that entire piece. According to the Shulchan Aruch. Lo Amru, I'm reading my 92.4, the second paragraph by Shulchan Aruch Code of Jewish Law. Lo Amru, we only say Chaticha Atzma, Nasan Nevela, Bebasa B'chalav. When do we say this concept that the whole thing now becomes asur, prohibited, and I need 60 verses the whole piece? That's only uniquely by Basa B'chalav, milk and meat, because again, each one was permitted. Together, the fusion created this prohibition. Avalo b'shari surim, but not by other things that are asur. Kagon, for example, kazayit chelev. Let's say there was some forbidden fat, right? Forbidden fat is not because you're on a diet. Forbidden fat is parts of the animal that are sacrificial parts. So we don't eat that. All of that gets removed. Typically in America, the whole hindquarters of the animal goes to the non-kosher consumer because it's very, very laborious and quite difficult to remove all of those things. Okay, but let's say some chelev fell onto a piece, the ain bashishim, and you don't have 60, so that piece became prohibited, and then that got mixed in with other pieces. I don't need 60 verses that whole piece. I only need 60 verses that original drop of chelev that fell in. That's how the Sfardim follow. That's the opinion of the Mechaber. The Ramah says, "V'yesh omrim damrinan b'kol ha'isurin chaticha asma naset nevela." In fact, by all isurin, we say if it first fell on a piece and there's not 60, that whole piece becomes chatichat isur, becomes prohibited. And if that then gets mixed in, I need 60 verses, the whole thing. That's the custom that is spread through the Ashkenazic lands, the English Shanot. And we will not deviate from that. Now, but in the lab-grown meat, or if we were to have lab-grown milk, which would take an actual milk cell particle and somehow get that to keep dividing and dividing and dividing. So there, one might argue and say, okay, well, you've got 1 billion to 1, not 60 to 1. You've got 1 billion to 1. However, when it comes to that, there is another kashrut concept that comes in play. And that is in the Mishnah Avodah Zarah. Amar Rabbi Yehuda said, Sha'al Rabbi Yishmael at Rabbi Yehoshua. Rabbi Yishmael asked Rabbi Yehoshua, Kishayu Mahalchin B'derech, when they were traveling on the road. In my morning Gemara class, we had a little interesting discussion. Yishmael is a very common name in the Gemara, right? Now, Yishmael, right, by us is not a name that is a very Muslim connected lineage. That no one's naming their kids Yishmael today. So it was interesting. Well, first of all, the Talmud was before the beginning of Islam, right? In which case, Yishmael, right, has a beautiful meaning. Yishmael, God should hear. He was the son of Avram, and we also have a teaching that he did teshuvah later on in his life, right? So in Talmudic times, Yishmael was a name that was fairly common. In our world today, with the advent of Islam, so you don't have it'd be very strange, unusual to have a Jewish kid named Yishmael. Okay, that's an aside. Rabbi Yehuda said, Rabbi Yishmael asked Rabbi Yehoshua when they were traveling, Amalo, mitnei ma asru gvinat hagoyim. Why does the cheese of goyim, of non-Jews, why is that prohibited? Amalo, he said, mitnei shemamidin oto, because they curdle it, bekeva shel nevela, with the stomach contents of a nevela, of a non-slaughtered, properly slaughtered animal carcass. Now, but 1 second, you can have a lot more than 60 to 1, right? Corresponding to that. So what's the issue? We just learned you have non-kosher, 60 to 1, you're fine. Well, once again, as we turn your page, the Shulchan Aruch, once again, Yoredei of the laws of kashrut. There we say Hamamid, Ba'or Keva Nevelo Trefo Behema Tmeya Oser Bikol Shehu. Okay. There we say the Shulchan Aruch rules also that if you curdle using the skin of a stomach of an animal that's a nevela or treifa, right, a non-kosher animal, right, whether it's a kosher animal that wasn't properly slaughtered or a non-kosher animal, it will prohibit even if it is the smallest, the most minute amount, right? Why is that? On that, the Ramah, Rav Moshe Isserles, explains, Mishum de davar asur ba'atzmo u'ma'amid afilu be'elef lo batio. Why do we say that 60 will negate something? So basically, as we saw, if you're not going with 60, if you've got a trustworthy non-Jewish chef, so then he will be able to do the taste test and determine does it have the taste or not. If it's notain ta'am, if it injects flavor, problem. If the flavor is batel, is lost, is nullified, then it's not a problem. But being that we can't test that by using a taste test, therefore we go by the general rule of 60. And it's interesting, 60 actually is a term that the sages use. For example, they say that Shabbos is me'ein olam haba, right? It's a taste. It's about 1/60th of the world to come, meaning at 1/60th, it's very, very close. Might you taste it? Might you not taste it? And that's why they use that in terms of Shabbos and olam haba. Right? If Shabbos is a chore, I can't check my email, I can't do this, I can't do that. So then you're on the negative side of that taste test, and you're not going to taste olam haba. If a person loves the fact that all of my worldly, earthly concerns, worries, burdens are lifted off, and no cell phone, no computer, no texts, no tweets, no nothing. Just go to shul, spend time with my wonderful community, spend time with my family. Then you're at the point of you taste the olam haba, the world to come that is there. So 60th is the whole idea of it's going to become nullified. It's going to become lost. It's negated. But over here in this case, and then we'll come to the case of the lab-grown issues. Over here in this case, the whole reason you have cheese is because of those few, that the 1 in 1,000 enzymes, whatever it was. That's why you have the cheese. So you can't say that it becomes negated, that it becomes nullified, that it's as if it doesn't exist. I'm tasting it, I'm seeing it, I'm feeling it, I'm chewing on it. That is what has turned this. Similarly, when it comes to certain spices, that will not be batel, that will not become nullified when you have 60 to 1, because it's there. It's not nullified. It's not negated. It is doing what it's meant to be doing. That is why by the lab-grown meat, where they would take a cell or a few cells, even if the cell was taken, right? Well, we have a question over there. Was the cell taken from a kosher animal, from a non-kosher animal? Or was it taken from a kosher animal? It was taken from a kosher animal. was taken from the kosher animal when it was alive, in which case then we have the issue of Aver Menachai, a limb of a live animal, or if it's taken from a kosher animal but it was not properly shechted. So there, the question is, what is the kosher status of this? And it was taken from a kosher animal that was properly shechted. So then the question is it going to be meat or is it going to be considered parava because the mixture that they put it in with then was all parava, kosher ingredients, and that allowed this cell to multiply, split a few billion times, right? Each one splitting, that's how you're getting this whole meat. So over there we had the issue that you can't say that one cell is batel, is annulled, is nullified, because now it is 8 billion cells, because all those 8 billion cells all came from that first one that kept splitting and splitting and splitting and splitting and splitting. So that's why when you come to the impossible burgers, we'll soon see there's another issue over there. Okay? But
I mean, if the issue is that it tastes like meat, it tastes like meat.
correct. Right? So no, by which case?
For impossible burgers.
Okay. That's much less of an issue. Okay? Yes.
Why wouldn't you make a distinction of bidiavad and lehatchila? In the case of the milk falling into the pot, it's bidiavad. We didn't say it was kosher if you did it intentionally. And with these other manufactured products, it's all done lehatchila. So does bittul work lehatchila?
Oh, okay. So you're raising another important point, right? Which is another issue that we would, right? So, right, Steve is mentioning another point. So let's say, so I'm saying we never get to bittul by the lab-grown meat because it's like that spice. It's like that curdling agent. That is what has created everything here. So it can't be batel. Steve is raising that there's actually another issue. Even if one would want to say that it does become batel, nullified, there is a din of ein mevatlin iser lechatchila, that we're not allowed. Let's say, if one goes to culinary school, that's why you need to go to a kosher culinary school, because in culinary school you have to cook milk and meat together, and even besides the eating of it, there's a prohibition against the actual cooking. But let's say I'm a well-versed halachic person, and the reason why they put milk into soup is because it helps to thicken it. So I say, great, I've got a 60-quart vat of soup here, chicken soup, right? 60 quarts. I'm going to put in less than 1 quart of milk. And it will make it nice and creamy as milk does for soups. And it's batel.
No.
Perfect, right?
No.
Wrong. Ein mevatlin isur lechatchila. We don't go ahead and put in something that's non-kosher, even knowing that, well, it's less than the 1/60th ratio. You're not allowed to do that. Yes, so if there would be bittul over here by the lab-grown meat, so then there would still be the issue of ein mevatlin isur lechatchila, and therefore if it's kosher meat, it would stay meat. If it's non-kosher meat, it would stay non-kosher. But when we come to the impossible burger, or when it comes to almond milk, right? So actually, it's interesting. Almond milk is something that existed a long time ago, and the Shulchan Aruch deals with that. To take a look, let me go back to where we were over here for you guys. Make sure I'm keeping you up to date. Yeah, the Shulchan Aruch 87.3 discusses almond milk. He writes there, "V'nagu lasot chalav mishkedim." There are those who now make milk out from shkedim, out from almonds. Umenichim ba basar oaf. Whoever's there, you have to mute. Sorry. Who's that? Okay. Umenichim bo, and they put in basar oaf. They put chicken into your almond milk, and that's fine. Why? Hoil ve'enorak midrabanan, since even real milk and chicken is only a rabbinic prohibition, that's fine. Aval basar behema, but if you're putting animal meat into your almond milk, yesh laniach etzel hachalav shkedim, you should have some almonds on the table next to the almond milk, and that way everyone knows that it's not real milk, it's almond milk, and therefore that's why I'm allowed to have it mishum marit ha'ayin, because of marit ayin, the appearance of the eye. Now people often ask me, Rabbi, what's the issue of maris ayin? Right? We're supposed to judge everyone favorably, right? So I would never think for a moment this person. And my answer to them is exactly. That's the problem of maris ayin. When they see someone of upstanding character, and who they know to be religiously observant, they see them having milk and meat, they'll walk away and say, hey, the rabbi was having milk and meat. I guess it's allowed, right? And next thing you know, they're having a double cheeseburger at In-N-Out Burger. It must be allowed. So because of marit ayin, therefore the appearance should not be misleading. You must leave the almonds over there. Now, when non-dairy creamer first came out, I think it was like the 1960s, 1970s. So all the kosher caterers, if they were putting non-dairy creamer on the table, it couldn't be in just a mug. It needed to be in the container that said on it non-dairy creamer, similar to what the Ramah said over here, that you need to have some almonds on the table. Why? Because marit ayin is an issue, and it led to some serious problems when it came to people misunderstanding the kashrut. And the example that we have of that is right here in Bereshit, where we have the famous story. Eila toldot Yaakov. These are the generations of Yaakov, of Jacob. Yosef was ben Shvas Shana, was 17 years old. Hayaroet Achav. He was being a shepherd with his brothers, we'll say, Bitzon, by the flock. V'hunar, and he was acting as a lad with the sons, the children of Bilhah and the children of Zilpah, the wives of his father. Vayaveh Yosef et dibatam ra'ah el avihem. And Joseph would bring evil tales, bad things about them that they were doing. He would come and tell the father. What were these things? Rashi there says, we have both in Hebrew and in English, dibatam ra'ah, kol ra'ah, shayaro'eh be'echav, anything bad he saw by his brothers, B'nai Levi, B'nai Leah, the sons of Leah, Haya Magila, he can tell his father. What were those things? Shayu ochlin ever menachai. They were eating a limb of a live animal, which was already a Noahide prohibition, one of the 7 Noahide prohibitions. Umizalzlim b'vnei hashvachot, and they were acting in a degrading manner to the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, calling them avadim, slaves, v'chashudim ala arayot, and claiming that they were suspect when it came to sexual impropriety. And he was wrong in all three cases. Uvishloshas on Laka, and Yosef was hit or was tested in each of these three categories. First of all, even in a state of a bit of a frantic, when they had just sold him, they sat down and they shechted an animal, and they did not have Ever Menachai. He saw his mistake. Valdiba, and that he said that they called the other brothers Avadim, he was sold as an Eved, as a slave. And because of his claim that they were not careful when it came to moral issues, Batisa Esher Adonav, he was tested in a very, very severe way in the moral issues. But what was this Avram Menachai? What did he see that he misunderstood? So the Shlah HaKodesh, I have it in Hebrew, not in English, he says, Echla min zeh al shiftei kadoshim mishartei el yom. How can we believe that these holy men, right, that they were eating Avram Menachai? And I heard that it's found in an ancient writing, this idea, that Avram Avinu asa sefer Yitzira umastor li Yitzchak. There's a sefer Yitzira. We've all heard of the golem. Oh, what's the golem? A golem is they took this form of a person, and they said certain Kabbalistic things, and it came to life. And the famous golem of the Maharal of Prague, who was a protector, right? Many such stories that we hear. There's something called the Sefer Yetzirah, right? The book of creation, and that has in there the different words to say to create different things. Avram gave it to Yitzchak. Yitzchak gave it to Yaakov. Yaakov gave it to his sons. Ki'ain, right, to those who can be trusted, because you don't give Sitrei Torah Ka'ela. You don't give these secrets of the Torah only to those who are tzenu and who are modest, who will only use it in a proper manner. And Miyuchasei Yisroel, and those who have the proper lineage of every generation. And therefore it was given to the Bnei Gevira, it was given to the sons of Leah, not to the sons of the maidservants. And we find in the Gemara an idea, Debara Egla Tilta B'chol Erev Shabbos, Aidei Esek Sefer Yitzira, B'tzira of Hashemot, that there were some sages who would create a calf every Friday, right, for Shabbat, using these different Kabbalistic terms and words, and certainly that which was created by these words, names of God, and not through being born from another animal, it doesn't need shechita. And if it could be eaten even when it's alive, and that's what the Shvatim did. But Yosef didn't understand. Others say it was a ben pakua. A ben pakua, there's halacha that if one shechts a mother animal, and and she's pregnant, and then the baby comes out, right? You cut open the mother after shechting it, and the baby is taken out, and the baby is viable, and the baby is alive. Halachically, the animal is shechted already. It doesn't ever need shechita. It was shechted along with his mother, even though it's alive and kicking, and now it might be an 800-pound bull, right? So different explanations that are given over there for what the brothers did, Yosef's misunderstanding. But we see that there is this concern of misunderstanding, and therefore there needs to be clear kashrut evidence. I mean, it needs to be clearly stated that this is not what you think it is. This is not what it looks like. You're having almond milk in the time of the Shulchan Aruch. Put out some almonds. Even speak about drinking blood. Now, blood is absolutely prohibited. But what blood is not prohibited? Fish blood. Fish blood doesn't sound overly appealing to me, or from the looks on your faces, or to any of you, right? But again, if a person is going to be drinking fish blood, there needs to be some scales, fish scales on the table over there, so people can identify it. Now, again, originally with a non-dairy creamer, you had to put out the container. Now it's become so prevalent that you don't need to put out the container anymore. Everyone knows that there will not be this maris ayin issue. Yes, Janet.
So fish eggs, like caviar, if you've seen that it's harvested directly from a fish you got, is it then kosher?
There's kosher caviar now.
Yeah.
If it's from a kosher fish,
Why wouldn't it be kosher? And it's farm.
it's from a kosher fish.
I've
Then
always
it's-
thought since it itself doesn't have the fins and scales and it's from the waters, the teeming waters, it was not kosher, but you're saying that's not the case.
I'm saying if it's kosher, properly kosher certified, there would not be an issue with it.
Okay.
Yeah,
What if you don't know?
then we don't eat.
I'll bring you some.
When in doubt, do without.
If it's from a salmon,
Okay.
it's kosher.
So
Yeah.
like salmon roe, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Or sturgeon.
yeah. Now,
Any kosher
now,
fish.
when it comes to fish, right? You need to either see a scale, in which case you're fine. Fins or scales, but anything that has scales has fins. So if you see a scale, you're fine. But if it's being sold, packaged as this is cod, this is sea bass, this whatever it is, right? Without kosher certification and without a scale on it, so then one is not allowed to have that, because not just laws of kosher, but there is a lot of counterfeiting that goes on with fish, with cheap fish being presented as expensive fish. But an exception, and therefore we'll need to have either a scale, you could see the scale yourself, or it has kosher certification. The exception to that is salmon, trout, any of those things that have that pinkish, orangish hue to it. Only kosher fish have that. Therefore, one can go to Costco and buy on the styrofoam, they have those nice pieces of salmon. It's not kosher, there's no kosher certification on it, but you know that is from salmon, because again, only kosher fish have that coloring to it. So also when it comes to what you're bringing up, the eggs, you have to make sure that it's either, you have to know what it is. You won't need kosher certification. When it comes to this milk, so Rabbi Elephant from the OU said that it's very clear. Chalav, Chadash. It's not being packaged in Israel. Most of the milk comes in bags. How do they still do that? Not anymore? The milk used to come in bags, right? Now it's in cartons. Okay? But this is clearly packaged very differently. Chalav, Chadash, the new milk, right? Parava on it. So that will be perfectly fine to have along with your meat, along with your meat products. The fact that it is that the molecular structure, right, has other things that are added in, right? It has different things that are added in for flavoring, right? And as long as all of those are kosher, as is the case over here, that will be perfectly fine to have that along with your burger, whatever it is, right? Now, the OU did draw the line in certain places. I'm not really sure how they drew the line, meaning the Impossible Burgers, right? They give an OU on. But the Impossible Pork, even though it is impossible, right? Meaning that there is no meat whatsoever, no pork in it whatsoever. But that they did not want to give an OU. They felt they couldn't have an OU. Next thing it says impossible pork. Yet you have your OU bacon bits that they sell, right?
Are those
And
from Turkey?
from the country or from the bird?
From the bird.
From the bird. Yeah. So they're the no. It's as far as I know, it's parva. Oh, could be.
Oh, well.
So they do have OU bacon bits. I'm not sure why OU bacon bits is better than OU impossible pork. Whatever the case is. Sorry?
They paid
Huh?
Isn't there still a bit of fine iron with bacon bits? Because it says bacon bits and then it has smaller text. I mean, but the big thing is bacon bits. And so on
Yeah.
the shelf, someone sees someone reaching for bacon bits and isn't as close. So isn't there a maritime issue there?
So I would say that, we rely on the standards of the major kashrut organizations. That's the OU, OK, KUFK. Here we have the RCC, right? And if they're putting on their stamp, then that means that they feel that it's well known enough that, in our
Maybe
vegan world,
in Israel, maybe, but here,
again, I'm relying on them. I'm relying on them and their sense. So this Chalav Chadash, even though that the molecular setup of it is identical to the molecular setup of these dairy proteins, right? Proteins identical in structure, right? But they're not coming from a cow. They're not coming from milk. They're coming from yeast, and they've managed to duplicate the molecular structure, and therefore it will do whatever milk does. Right? It will do whatever milk does, but it will be perfectly kosher and perfectly parva.
is it the proteins only or also the milk fat? Is it already fat free, so it's skim milk?
There's nothing from a cow.
I know, but they're saying all the milk, only the proteins are all the constituents of milk.
It's not kosher for passive.
Yeast. Right? Everything that goes in there is kosher parva. There's no fat, right? How do they?
But milk intrinsically has fat and lactose.
Probably because of these proteins
Okay.
that give it that consistency. Yeah. Yes.
So does that mean they could make cheese and ice cream and stuff with it?
Why not?
Yeah.
So we could have flour cheese?
We already do, but there's there are many parva cheeses out there. Yeah. Yeah.
No, but real milk, real dairy cheese.
Go to the vegan area, you'll find right. But it doesn't. Most of them don't feel.
Cheryl, it's
Right.
a very good and creative idea.
Yeah. Right.
He's saying from a real milk source.
Yeah. Yeah. All of these recipes might very well become staples. Right.
Let's get our
Rabbi
homemade
Elfin was
ice cream.
asked about that. So will this completely change the whole structure, the whole fabric of kashrut? And he said, look, this is perfectly kosher. That's what I'm telling you. It's not my decision to say, no, I'm not going to allow this because it'll change the fabric of kosher. It's kosher, it's kosher. Look, already we have all of these things. We have kosher bacon bits. We have kosher this. We have kosher that. We have cheeses. So.
But
I'm sorry.
The cheeses.
Yeah.
The cheeses are all still plant-based.
I
You know,
have
like soy. This would be dairy based, is what Cheryl's saying.
It's not dairy
It's
based.
not dairy.
It's yeast based.
Dairy based in that it's the same protein.
It's not dairy based.
Okay,
It's yeast based.
okay.
Yeah, if it was dairy based, it would be dairy. That's what we began with. That would be like the lab produced milk.
Okay,
If it was dairy based, it would be dairy.
I
But
see.
it's not. Yes, Alan.
Okay, so how did we get from you can have bitul bashishi with dropping milk in a soup to we need separate dishes. Like a dish that's been clean clearly has less than a 60th of anything, right? Like, why do we do these things?
That's an interesting point, Alan.
Okay. Yes, so the Shulchan Aruch, all right, in order to keep the kashrut, all the questions that I ever get about kashrut, right? It's never that a pig walked in, right? Right? No pig ever walked into a person's kitchen and now they have a question, right? It's from the mixing of milk and meat because things get absorbed, things then come out, and therefore, in order to properly keep kosher, safeguards were put in, right? To the point that if I'm eating dairy and Natalie's eating meat, one of us will be sure to have a placemat, right? Just to make sure none of us will lean over and dip in, right? So you're right now, but things can become compromised. Meaning, I have my meat plate, right, and I washed it well, but within 24 hours now, I'm putting on a cheese omelet, right? It'll absorb some whatever went in will come out. Now, true, we never know how much went in. So therefore, when we do our calculation of shishim, let's say I have a meat spoon, a meat ladle, and I mistakenly put that into the dairy soup to scoop out, right? So now, is the soup compromised or not? It depends, right? Does a soup have 60 versus the ladle? I'm good. Does it have 60 versus the ladle? I'm not good. So you might ask, oh yeah, but you want to do 60 versus the whole ladle. I mean, you took out a ladle. So it wasn't a meat ladle that just dissolved into your soup, right? So you're right. But being that we have, the halacha dictates, being that we have no way of knowing how much it had absorbed and it had expelled into the soup, it wasn't more than the ladle itself.
Well, hold on. We have no way of knowing anything. It's all a judgment call.
Correct.
Right? So if we're making a judgment call by milk dropping into the soup, you can make a judgment call that there is no,
we have no way of knowing. So therefore we go 60 versus the whole ladle. So you're right, when it comes to keeping kashrut, we have many of these safeguards to play it safe. And a reason for that is that kashrut is unique amongst all of the mitzvot and the prohibitions. Meaning, if I'm not keeping Shabbos, I don't become a Shabbos breaking being. I didn't keep Shabbos. I didn't put on tefillin, right? But I literally am what I eat. Meaning my cells of my body, me, this part of me, is comprised of that which I consume. New cells are being made constantly. From what? From the things that I eat, the body breaks down, and new cells are being produced. So when it comes to kashrut, you become that. And that's why there is this interesting pasuk called Timtum. The pasuk says, Al Tamtain, that if a person is not eating kashrut, not eating kosher, he gets clogged. We're not talking about cholesterol and arteries here. We're talking about the spiritual flow, that the ruchniyut, the spirituality, doesn't flow through the body so easily. The ear doesn't, what it hears, it doesn't have such an impression on the neshama because it's coming through this non-kosher parts. So by kashrut, we have a special level that we try to adhere to. Yes, Dov.
I think the guy who invented what we've been discussing is what's the guy's name?
Bart Simpson.
Yeah, because like he's all about, hey man, don't have a cow.
Okay, Dov?
That's funny.
Well said. Okay, my friends, we'll call it over here.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yashikach, everybody.